The call came on a Tuesday morning in November. I was sitting on my back porch, watching the last of the autumn leaves spiral down into the yard, drinking coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. My phone buzzed, and the name on the screen was one I hadn't expected. Patricia Calloway, Eddie's attorney. Eddie Palmer had been dead for 3 weeks. Mrs. Calloway's voice was professional but gentle. "Mr. Sullivan, I need you to come to my office this afternoon if possible. Edward left something in my care with very specific instructions. He asked me to deliver it to you exactly 21 days after his passing. Today is that day." I set my coffee down. Eddie and I went back 42 years. We met at a firehouse in Bridgeport, Connecticut. 2 young guys fresh out of the service who didn't know what to do with ourselves. He became a career firefighter. I started a small construction company that grew into something bigger than I ever imagined. We were best men at each other's weddings, godfathers to each other's kids, fishing buddies every summer at Lake Champlain. When my first wife, Carol, lost her battle with breast cancer 7 years ago, Eddie was the one who sat with me in the hospital parking lot for 3 hours because I couldn't stop shaking long enough to drive home. Then 6 months ago, the doctors found a tumor in Eddie's pancreas. Stage 4. He fought like the stubborn old fireman he was, but by the end, he weighed 130 pounds and could barely lift his head off the pillow. I was there the night he died, held his hand, told him I'd look after his wife, Margaret, told him I'd see him on the other side. And now his lawyer was telling me he'd left something behind, something with a timer on it. I drove to Patricia Calloway's office in Hartford. She was a small woman in her 60s, with reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She shook my hand, closed the door, and opened a locked drawer in her desk. She pulled out a small fireproof lockbox, the kind you buy at a hardware store for $40. There was a combination lock on it. "He said you'd know the combination," she told me. He also said, and I'm quoting him directly, "Watch it alone first, then decide what to do." He was very insistent about the alone part. I took the box. The combination was easy. 091583. The 15th of September 1983, the day Eddie and I both started at the firehouse. I didn't open it in the office. I thanked Mrs. Calloway and drove home. My wife, Diana, was out. She taught a yoga class on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, then usually went to lunch with her friends afterward. Wouldn't be back until 4 or 5. I sat at the kitchen table and opened the box. Inside was a USB drive, a handwritten letter, and a stack of printed documents about an inch thick. The letter was in Eddie's handwriting, shaky from the illness, but unmistakable. "Bobby," it read. That was his name for me. Nobody else on earth called me Bobby. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry for what's in this box. I'm sorry I have to be the one to tell you, but you're my brother, and I'd rather hurt you with the truth than let a lie kill you. Watch the video first, then look at the papers, then call the number on the back of this letter. His name is Vincent Reese. He's a private investigator. I hired him 2 months ago when I started noticing things. He knows everything. Trust him like you'd trust me. I love you, brother. Now protect yourself." My hands were steady, but my chest felt hollow. I plugged the USB into my laptop. Eddie's face appeared on screen. He was propped up in his hospital bed at home, the one Margaret had set up in the living room. His skin was gray. His eyes were sunken. But when he spoke, his voice was firm. "Bobby, I don't have much time left, so I'm going to say this straight. Your wife, Diana, is not who she says she is. I know that's hard to hear. I know you love her. I know she came into your life when you were at your lowest, and I know she made you feel like living again after Carol died. But she's a con artist, Bobby, a professional one, and she's going to kill you." I stopped the video, sat there in my kitchen staring at the frozen image of my dying best friend. Diana and I had been married for 2.5 years. I'd met her at my church, of all places. She was 43, a widow herself, she'd told me. Her husband had died of a sudden heart attack. She had a son, Tyler, 24 years old, who was trying to get a small business off the ground. She was kind, warm, patient with my grief. She never pushed. She let me come to her. And when I finally did, it felt like sunlight breaking through clouds after a long winter. Eddie had been at our wedding. He'd smiled, shaken Diana's hand, danced with Margaret. But looking back, I remembered something. A conversation at the reception. "Bobby," he'd said, pulling me aside near the bar. "Just promise me one thing. Keep your finances separate for a while. Just for a year or two. Get to know her." I'd laughed it off. Told him I was 63, not 23. I knew what I was doing. I pressed play. "2 months ago," Eddie continued, "I was at your house for dinner. Diana was in the kitchen, and I went to use the bathroom. The door to the guest bedroom was open, and I saw Tyler in there on his phone. He didn't see me, but I heard what he said. He told whoever was on the line, quote, 'The old man's worth about $4 million when you count the business sale and the properties. Mom says another 6 months on the supplements, and his heart will give out. Then we split it and disappear.' End quote." Eddie paused, coughed, took a sip of water. "I stood there in that hallway, Bobby, and my blood went cold. I wanted to walk in there and break that kid's jaw, but I've been around long enough to know that if I'd done that, they'd have covered their tracks and you'd never believe me. You'd think I was a jealous old man trying to ruin your happiness. So I did something smarter. I hired Vincent Reese, retired FBI, the best there is, and what he found in 8 weeks will make your stomach turn." Eddie's jaw tightened. "The documents in this box tell the whole story, but let me give you the summary. Diana's real name is Diane Hartley. She's been married 3 times before you. Husband number 1 was a plumber in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Married in 2006, dead in 2008. Fell off a ladder at home. She collected $200,000 in life insurance. Husband number 2 was a retired postal worker in Albany. Married in 2011, dead in 2013. Heart failure at 59. She collected $350,000. Husband number 3, the one she told you about. The one who supposedly died of a sudden heart attack. His name was Gerald Ashford. He was a real estate investor in Providence. Married in 2017. Dead in 2019. She walked away with over $1 million from his estate and insurance." Eddie leaned forward, and even through the screen, even knowing he was already gone, I felt the intensity of his gaze. "Bobby, she's poisoning you. The supplements she gives you every morning, the ones she orders from that special health food website. Vincent had them analyzed. They contain a compound called oleandrin. It's derived from the oleander plant. In small doses over time, it damages the heart, mimics natural cardiac deterioration. A man your age, with your family history of heart trouble, no coroner would look twice. It would just be another sad story about an old man whose heart gave out." I turned off the video, walked to the bathroom, opened the cabinet where Diana kept the supplements she gave me every morning. A brown bottle with a handwritten label from some online wellness company I'd never heard of. I'd been taking them for over a year. She told me they were a special blend for cardiovascular health. Herbs, vitamins, natural stuff. She said her naturopath had recommended them. I put the bottle in a plastic bag, sealed it, and hid it in my workshop. Replaced it with a similar-looking multivitamin from the drugstore. Then, I went back to the kitchen and opened the documents. Vincent Reese had been thorough in a way that made me understand why Eddie trusted him. There were public records for all 3 previous husbands, death certificates, insurance payouts, property transfers. Diana had changed her last name each time, moved to a new state each time. She was careful, patient. She never stayed in one place long enough for anyone to connect the dots. But it got worse. Tyler wasn't just her son. He was her partner. Bank records showed that after each husband's death, large sums were transferred to accounts in Tyler's name. He'd been part of this since he was 19 years old. His entire adult life had been spent helping his mother identify, seduce, marry, and murder wealthy older men. The last set of documents hit the hardest. Insurance policies. 3 of them, taken out in my name over the past 18 months. Total value, $3.2 million. My signature on every one, except I had never signed them. I had never even seen them. And then, At the bottom of the stack, a printed email exchange between Tyler and someone named Jay. No last name. Tyler had written, "Mom wants to move the timeline up. The old man's been complaining about chest pains. Doctor put him on monitoring. If they do blood work and find the oleandrin, we're done. Jay needs to be ready by December. Make it look like a break-in." Jay's response was one line. "Tell her it's 50,000 up front, 50 after. I don't care how you stage it. Just make sure I'm not on camera. December." It was November 9th. They were planning to kill me within weeks. I called the number on the back of Eddie's letter. Vincent Reese answered on the second ring. His voice was calm, deep. The voice of a man who had spent decades dealing with the worst of humanity. "Mr. Sullivan," he said, "I've been expecting your call. I'm sorry about Eddie. He was a good man. He spent his last weeks making sure you'd survive." Vincent came to my house that evening, after Diana had gone to bed. He was in his late 50s, silver hair, built like someone who still ran 5 miles every morning. We sat in my workshop with the door locked, and he laid out the situation. The supplements were already being tested at a private lab. He expected the results within 48 hours. He'd identified Jay as Jason Pruitt, a man with 2 prior convictions for assault and robbery who had been released from state prison 11 months ago. He'd been tracking Tyler's movements and had photographs of Tyler meeting with Pruitt at a diner in Waterbury 3 times in the past month. "But here's the thing I need you to understand," Vincent said, leaning forward. "Eddie came to me because he knew you wouldn't believe it without proof, and he knew that if he confronted Diana himself, she would have packed up and vanished overnight. She's done it before. When her second husband's sister started asking questions about the death, Diana disappeared, changed her name, moved 2 states away. Within a year, she had a new target. Eddie wanted to make sure she couldn't run this time. That's why he had me build the case first. That's why he set the 21-day delay. He needed time after his death for me to finish the financial forensics and confirm the insurance fraud. If you'd gotten this box too early, we wouldn't have had enough to put her away." That answered the question I'd been asking myself all afternoon. Eddie hadn't waited because he was careless. He'd waited because he was strategic. Even dying, he was thinking 3 moves ahead, like he always did when we played chess on his front porch. For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. I smiled at Diana over breakfast, took the fake supplements, let her rub my shoulders and tell me I looked tired, complained about shortness of breath and let her cluck with concern and suggest I take it easy. Every night, after she fell asleep, I'd go to my workshop and meet with Vincent or talk on a burner phone he'd given me. The lab results came back. Oleandrin, concentrated at levels far above what occurs naturally in any supplement. The toxicologist Vincent consulted said that at the dosage I'd been receiving, I would likely have experienced a fatal cardiac event within 4 to 6 months. I'd already been taking them for 14 months. The fact that I was still alive was, in the doctor's words, a combination of my naturally strong constitution and plain luck. Vincent contacted a detective he'd worked with during his FBI days. Detective Paul Harrigan, Hartford Police Department, Homicide Division. Harrigan reviewed the evidence and, within 24 hours, assembled a task force. They moved quietly. No warrants yet. No tips that could leak. They wanted Jason Pruitt in the act. The plan was simple. I would tell Diana I was driving to my daughter's house in upstate New York for Thanksgiving week. I'd leave on a Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving. Instead, I would check into a hotel in Farmington, 15 minutes away. Vincent had already installed surveillance cameras throughout my house. Tiny things hidden in smoke detectors, bookshelves, even a kitchen clock Diana had bought me for my birthday. Harrigan's team would be positioned in an empty house across the street that happened to be for sale. The night before I was supposed to leave, something happened that nearly broke my composure. Diana made dinner, pot roast, my favorite. She poured me a glass of wine. She sat across from me and reached for my hand. "Robert," she said, "I want you to know how grateful I am. After Gerald died, I thought I'd never find happiness again. You gave me a second chance. You gave Tyler a father figure. I don't say it enough, but I love you." I looked into her eyes. They were warm, sincere. If I hadn't heard the recordings, if I hadn't read the documents, I would have believed every word. That was what made her so dangerous. She wasn't a cartoon villain twirling a mustache. She was a woman who could manufacture love so convincingly that even the target of her scheme would defend her to his dying breath, which was exactly what her previous victims had probably done. I squeezed her hand. "I love you too," I said. "I'll be back Sunday." Wednesday morning, I loaded my suitcase into the car. Diana kissed me goodbye in the driveway. Tyler had stopped by the night before, unusual for a weekday, and made a point of asking when exactly I'd be back. "Sunday evening," I told him. He nodded, hugged me. "Take care of yourself, old man," he said with a grin. I drove to the airport, parked in long-term parking to make the story hold up, then took an Uber to the hotel. Vincent was already there with a laptop showing feeds from every camera in my house. For 24 hours, nothing happened. Diana went to her yoga class, came home, watched television. I started to wonder if maybe they'd changed their plans. Then, on Thanksgiving Day at 11 in the morning, Tyler arrived at the house. He wasn't alone. Jason Pruitt was with him. He was a big man, 6'2", heavy-set, with a shaved head and a neck tattoo of a scorpion. They sat at my kitchen table, and Diana poured them coffee. The cameras captured everything. Diana spread out a printed floor plan of my house. She pointed to the back door. She showed Pruitt where my bedroom was, where I kept a safe in the closet, what to take to make it look like a burglary. She was calm, organized. She'd done this before, and it showed. Pruitt asked, "What if the neighbors hear something?" Tyler answered, "It's Thanksgiving. Everyone's at family dinners. The houses around here empty out by noon. No one will hear a thing." Diana looked at Pruitt. "He needs to be dead before the paramedics arrive. Don't leave him injured. Don't leave him able to talk. After it's done, take the safe, take the silverware from the dining room, take his watch from the nightstand, then leave through the backyard and over the fence to the parking lot behind the church." Pruitt nodded. "Saturday night. I'll be here at 10. Diana reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "25,000 now," she said. "25 when it's confirmed. Tyler will meet you at the diner in Waterbury on Monday." I watched all of this on a laptop screen in a hotel room 15 minutes away. Vincent had his hand on my shoulder. I was grateful for it, because without that anchor, I think I might have driven to the house and done something I'd regret. Detective Harrigan had been watching the same feed from across the street. He called Vincent. "We have everything we need. We'll take Pruitt Saturday night in the act. I want him inside the house with a weapon." The next 2 days crawled. I stayed in the hotel, barely eating, watching the feeds. Diana went about her Thanksgiving, as if nothing were wrong. She called my daughter to wish her a happy holiday, asked if I was enjoying myself. My daughter, who was part of the plan by this point, told Diana I was out walking the dog with my grandkids. Diana said, "How wonderful." She hoped I was resting. Saturday evening, I told Diana on the phone that I was leaving my daughter's house in the morning. She said she missed me, said the house was too quiet without me. Then she left for a dinner with her yoga friends. Tyler had gone to a bar in New Haven where, according to his social media, he was watching college football with 8 of his fraternity brothers. His alibi. Diana's alibi. At 9:45, I was back in my own house. Detective Harrigan had positioned officers at every exit. 2 plainclothes in the empty house across the street. 2 more in an unmarked van in the church parking lot behind my property. Vincent was in the closet of the guest bedroom with a body camera. I lay in my bed in the dark. My heart was hammering. At 65 years old, I was lying in my own bed, waiting for a man to come and try to kill me. At 10:08, I heard the back door open. Harrigan's team had left it unlocked intentionally. Footsteps in the kitchen, the creak of the hallway floor, then silence. He was at my bedroom door. It swung open. In the dim light from the hallway, I saw the silhouette of a large man holding a crowbar. He took 1 step into the room. The lights exploded on from every direction. Harrigan stepped out from behind the door, weapon drawn. 4 officers appeared in the hallway behind Pruitt. Vincent emerged from the guest room across the hall. "Hartford Police," Harrigan said. Drop the weapon. Get on the ground. Pruitt's face went through 5 emotions in 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, calculation, panic, and finally surrender. He dropped the crowbar, hit the floor. Within 30 seconds, he was in handcuffs. The rest of the night was controlled chaos. Pruitt was taken to the station, and within an hour, facing the evidence, he started talking. He gave up everything. Diana's name, Tyler's role, the meetings at the diner, the cash payments, the plan. Diana was arrested at the restaurant. The officers told me later that when they approached her table, she looked up from her salad, saw the badges, and didn't say a single word, didn't cry, didn't protest, didn't ask what was happening. She simply put down her fork, placed her napkin on the table, and stood up. She knew. Tyler was pulled out of the bar in New Haven. He was less composed. He screamed. He cried. He called for his mother. He told the officers they had the wrong person, that this was a misunderstanding, that he wanted a lawyer. When they showed him the surveillance footage at the station, he went quiet. Then he said 5 words. It was all her idea. The next 8 months were a slow unraveling. The DA charged Diana with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, 3 counts of insurance fraud, forgery, theft by deception, and attempted murder by poisoning. Tyler was charged with conspiracy, fraud, and accessory to attempted murder. Pruitt was charged with attempted murder, conspiracy, and criminal trespass. But the biggest revelations came from the investigation into Diana's past. Working with authorities in Pennsylvania, New York, and Rhode Island, Harrigan's team built a case that connected Diana to all 3 previous husbands' deaths. Exhumation orders were issued. The plumber in Scranton, the one who fell off a ladder, was found to have elevated levels of a sedative in his preserved tissue samples. The postal worker in Albany had oleandrin in his system, same as what she'd been giving me. Gerald Ashford's death was reclassified from natural causes to suspicious, and his family, who had always doubted the circumstances, finally had answers. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The courtroom was packed every day. The prosecution presented the surveillance footage. The jury watched Diana calmly explain to a hired killer where to find me in my own home, how to stage the scene, and how much she'd pay. They heard the recording Vincent had captured of Tyler at my dinner table months earlier, boasting to someone on the phone about the inheritance he was about to collect. They saw the lab analysis of the supplements. The toxicologist took the stand and explained in clinical detail how oleandrin destroys heart tissue, how the dosage Diana had been administering would have been fatal within months, and how it would have been virtually undetectable in a standard autopsy. But the moment that broke the courtroom was the video. Eddie's video. Patricia Calloway authenticated it. Vincent Reese testified about how Eddie had contacted him from his hospice bed, barely able to sit up, and asked him to investigate because he'd overheard Tyler's phone call and couldn't let his best friend die without a fight. The jury watched Eddie's gaunt face on the screen, heard his steady voice laying out the evidence, heard him say, "I love you, brother. Now protect yourself." 3 jurors were crying. The judge removed his glasses and wiped his eyes. Even one of Diana's defense attorneys looked shaken. Diana showed no emotion throughout the entire trial. Not during the testimony, not during the video, not during closing arguments. The only time her composure cracked was when the verdict was read. Guilty on all counts. Her hands trembled. Her chin dropped. For 1 second, maybe 2, the mask slipped, and I saw something underneath that wasn't grief or remorse. It was fury. Pure, cold fury at being caught. She was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. The judge cited the calculated nature of the crimes, the multiple victims, and the utter absence of remorse. Tyler received 20 years. He wept in the courtroom. Pruitt, who had cooperated with the prosecution, received 15 years. After sentencing, Gerald Ashford's daughter found me in the hallway outside the courtroom. She was about 40, dark hair, eyes red from crying. She grabbed my hands and held them. "Thank you," she whispered. "My father didn't fall for a con because he was stupid. He fell because he was lonely, and she exploited that. You stopped her from doing it to anyone else." I thought about that for a long time. She was right. Diana hadn't targeted fools. She'd targeted men who had lost the women they loved and were drowning in grief. Men who were vulnerable not because they were weak, but because they had loved deeply and didn't know how to live without that love. She had turned their capacity for devotion into a weapon against them. I sold the house. Couldn't sleep there anymore. Couldn't walk past the bedroom door without seeing that silhouette with a crowbar. I bought a smaller place, a 2-bedroom cottage near the water in Old Saybrook. Good neighbors. A security system that Vincent helped me choose. My daughter flew in from New York and stayed with me for a month. We talked about things we'd never talked about before. About how lonely I'd been after Carol died. About how I'd stopped calling friends, stopped going to the firehouse reunions, stopped doing anything that reminded me of the life I'd had. About how Diana had walked into that void and filled it so perfectly that I never questioned what she was. "Dad," my daughter said one night, sitting on the porch watching the water, "you didn't do anything wrong by wanting to be loved again." "I know," I told her. "But Eddie did everything right by making sure I'd live long enough to learn from it." 6 months after the trial, I established the Edward Palmer Foundation. Its mission is to protect elderly people from predatory relationships and financial exploitation. We fund investigations. We provide legal assistance to victims. We run awareness programs at senior centers and churches and community organizations. Every person we help. I think of Eddie. Every scam we uncover. Every con artist we expose. Every lonely old man or woman we save from someone like Diana. That's Eddie, still saving lives from beyond the grave. Margaret, Eddie's widow, serves on the board. She told me once that Eddie had spent his last lucid days not resting, not saying goodbye to old friends, not watching the sunsets he loved, but on the phone with Vincent Reese, reviewing documents, recording that video, making sure the evidence was airtight. He could barely breathe, Margaret said. But every time I told him to rest, he'd say, "Bobby's in trouble. I'll rest when he's safe." He never saw me safe. He died 11 days after recording that video. But he'd built the case so carefully, anticipated every variable so precisely, that it worked exactly as he intended. Even in death, Eddie Palmer was still pulling people out of burning buildings. Last week, I drove to Cedar Hill Cemetery in Hartford. Eddie's headstone is simple, the way he wanted it. Edward James Palmer, 1959 to 2025. Beloved husband, father, and friend. I sat on the grass beside it and talked to him the way I always do. Told him about the foundation. Told him about a woman in Stamford we'd helped last month. A 72-year-old retired teacher whose new boyfriend had been draining her savings. Told him we'd caught the guy. Got her money back. Got him arrested. Then I played a video on my phone. Not the warning video. The other one. At the very end of the USB, after all the evidence files and the formal recording, there was a short clip, just 2 minutes. Eddie, lying back on his pillow, the oxygen hissing, the afternoon light coming through the window behind him. "Bobby," he said, and his voice was soft now. No urgency, no fear, just the voice of my oldest friend. "Remember that first day at the firehouse? We were so scared we almost quit. You looked at me and said, 'Well, if we're going to be idiots, at least we're idiots together.' 42 years, brother. I wouldn't trade a single day. So here's my last order. Same as the first one. Don't quit. Don't you dare quit. You go out there and live the biggest, loudest, most stubborn life you can. And when your time comes, a long time from now, I'll be waiting at the firehouse. First round's on me," he grinned. That same grin from 1983. Then he lifted his hand in a half salute, the way we used to, when one of us headed out on a call and the other stayed behind. The video ended. I'm 65 years old. I live in a small cottage by the water. I have a good security system and a private investigator on retainer because Eddie insisted and paid for 5 years in advance. I have my daughter and my grandchildren. I have Margaret and the foundation. I have a purpose that gets me out of bed every morning. I'm alone, but I'm not lonely. There's a difference I didn't understand before, and it took almost dying to learn it. Every morning, I take my coffee out to the porch and watch the water. And sometimes, when the wind is right, I swear I can hear Eddie's voice carrying across the sound. Don't quit, Bobby. I haven't, and I won't. Because true friendship doesn't end when someone dies. It just becomes something else. It becomes a fireproof box with a combination lock, a voice on a screen that saves your life, a foundation that carries a name, a promise you keep every single day. And I intend to keep mine for as long as I'm breathing.